Today's assignment is just going to be a combination of everything you've learned so far about the Native Americans. There's two resources here that you're going to be using. As you can see, you're going to be answering questions on this Chapter 2 summary here. And then the book pages will help you with the vocab. When you click on the book pages, it'll bring up different book pages that I've copied out of the book that have the vocab words on it with the definition. So if we click on here, we can pull up the homework. Once you get here, you'll want to click Edit Presentation, Edit in Browser. And then once it pulls up, we'll be able to zoom. That way you can see it a little better, read the words a little better. So you'll want to click this drop-down arrow and click View. Your view may already be up here. You'll just need to figure out where View is, and then click Zoom. And then I always click 100%. I find that's the easiest to read, but you could do it more zoom or less zoom. And then I'll pull this up here. So as you can see, you guys get to skip this first part. I just talked about comparing and contrasting the Native American tribes, which we already did with that comparison chart. So we get to skip this part. So then we'll scroll down, and this is where our vocab is. So down here is the word bank that you're going to use. And you're going to be putting those words next to the definitions here. My suggestion would be to go through each word and look up the definition on the book pages and then figure out what definition it matches with. So I would go like to migration. I go to page 53, find the definition of migration on page 53, and then see which definition here matches, and then type migration next to it. Then you'll just work your way down through all these different words: artifact, civilization, tradition, division of labor, ceremony, adapt, and economy. And then you'll go to the next page. So number 9 and 10, so use the chapter summary timeline above to answer these questions. So that timeline is right up here. And now the timeline actually extends to the first page as well. You can see I just copied it out of the book, and this is the first page here. So here's the first part of the timeline. So you can see 8000 BC, large animals the early people hunt begin to die off. And then we continue the timeline. People in the Americas begin farming. The Olmec civilization begins, and then more than 30,000 people live in Cahokia. So we're going to use that timeline to answer, did the people start farming before or after animals began dying out? About how many people lived in Cahokia in AD 1200? So answering those two questions using that timeline, that then also goes to the first page. And number 12, how did life change for people once they began farming? So this is where you are thinking about the early people who were moving around, following wherever the mammoth herds went. That's how they were getting their food. They were just gathering whatever was in the woods around where they lived. But then they figured out how to start farming. So how did life change for them once they figured out how to farm? Think about before, they were following the herds around, hunting them, and then they figured out how to start farming. How did life change? Now 14 and 15, you're going to be using your notes, whether those notes are online or those notes are your paper packet, your packet we've been working on. You're going to use your note packet to answer those. So this wants to know, what are the two groups that lived in the eastern woodlands? On our note sheet we had where we wrote information about those two groups on that page. And then here wants to know what two Native American regions used wood for one of their most important resources. So again, on your note packet, looking for two groups that had wood or giant trees as their most important resource. And then question 16 says, what is one example of a way that Native Americans modified their environment? So you're thinking about, how are they changing the land? Which one of these things did they do that changed the land? And then 18 asks, what kind of things can affect the sources of food, clothing, and shelter available to Native American groups? So it's wanting you to think about, okay, some of the Native American groups used wood to build their houses. Some of the Native American groups used grass to build their house. Some of them used ice and snow to build their house. I just want you to know, why did each group have different things available to them? or use different things. You know, why did some of the groups hunt buffalo and some of the groups hunted whales? Why did each of them use different resources? What affected the sources of food, clothing, shelter available to them? And you'll just put your answer here in the text box. To answer your multiple choice questions, you can do a couple different things. You could click Insert, and then you could do a text box. It pulls it up here. You could drag it down to the letter. You know, you could type the letter X to go over it, and then drag it over. A is not the correct answer, just to let you know. So you can do it that way, or you can click Insert Picture or Shape. You can put a little shape over top of it. Drag the shape down, resize it to put it over the correct answer. Whichever works for you to let me know what is the correct answer on there. If you have any questions on filling that out, definitely send me an email, send me a message on Remind or a chat on Teams.